It's funny how things get blown out of proportion. It seems like there's no middle of the road anywhere on anything, and we sure do need people that are middle of the road, people that are balanced and not taking sides so readily. The news you see about the U.S. losing a landmark lawsuit by Robert Kennedy Jr., there's a reason you're not seeing a whole lot of that being played out in the press, is because it's not true. Nobody lost anything. It was a decision. Actually, the court decision was to dismiss the claim filed by Robert Kennedy and his ICANN organization, which is about consent for vaccines, not mandatory vaccines. And it's very, very, very telling when you read the actual court case, which is what we did, and any good journalist should read the case and not assume that what you're hearing from somebody with an MD after their name is actually accurate. What they found out, though, which is I think it's a significant victory, but it's not one that you can hang your hat on. It's just one you can use for a short period of time to try and fight this vaccine billionaires that want everybody vaccinated. Everybody must be vaccinated. What Kennedy was trying to do was compel for documents. He had not been getting any documents, and so when the documents didn't come, the case had to go up to a higher court, higher court, higher court. The government fought him the whole way. They were compelled to answer. A simple answer is all Kennedy was looking for, and he wanted the documents. So if the documents exist, they didn't provide them. Instead, the response from government agency was this: we have no tests that were conducted to ascertain the effectiveness and the safety of any vaccine. Well, sorry if I yell. Sorry. This is upsetting. So basically, when Kennedy got what he wanted and got what he needed, he withdrew the case. Involuntarily withdrew the case, and the judge let it go, dismissed it, actually, under prejudice, meaning nothing can be refiled. But Kennedy got what he wanted. He got admission that the FDA, National Institute of Health, World Health Organization, all these vaccine happy people that are governed, run, coerced, manipulated, and bribed by the pharmaceutical industry. None of them raised a hair about the fact these vaccines never were tested for safety. Now, what we have found is that thimerosal, a preservative used in live vaccines to prevent them from going bad and to prevent them from developing any anaerobic bacterium or any anaerobic fungus or yeast, they put mercury in the vaccine. They renamed it thimerosal just so they don't have to call it mercury, and then put this in the vaccines. And the FDA knows that mercury is in these vaccines, but of course it was such a small amount. It's not going to hurt you. Well, what we found over the years now, as we come to this today, is that mainstream news has been complicit in carrying forth a fraudulent message. Everybody is guilty of fraud in the vaccine chain. I mean, so these are huge findings. These are huge findings. So nobody's going to go to jail for the fraud. Anybody, though, who has an autistic child that suffered consequences following a vaccine now has a firm ground to stand on. Because the pharmaceutical industry maintaining that these are safe has nothing to base that opinion on. And the FDA complicit and completely turning their back on safety and efficacy studies, has now been outed as a criminal organization. So as we uncover all this evil as we go along, and uncover, America is not going to do a darn thing, because these billionaires have everybody by the throat, and literally by the throat, and they can apply pressure to the throat anytime they feel like it with basic impunity. Nowhere will the CIA or FBI investigate a single pharmaceutical complaint. And it has come out, by the way. And so the FDA is a criminal organization, and really we've got to overthrow our entire government and rewrite everything to get back that which our forefathers tried to give us. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen as long as mainstream keeps carrying the lies. And, I use the word liar quite frequently. And it's not used just to discredit people. It's used when we find people not telling the truth. When it's to the detriment of the health of people, then you should be calling people liar. You should be, waving a sign. You should be marching the streets with signs that say liar, liar. And it's not happening. Why? Because, of course, mainstream will feed you, all of this nonsense from these wonderful government agencies that are here to protect us. America the Beautiful, right? Well, so nobody lost the lawsuit, but they lost a battle. And the battle is they finally admitted in writing that they were approving vaccines without safety testing. Mandating a 6-month-old baby to get a hepatitis B vaccine is criminal, I think. I think it's an overreach, and I think that, ever since there were laws, there were people trying to create loopholes in those laws, either for profit or to avoid criminal prosecution. And appellate court and Supreme Court decisions have echoed this: wherein your rights are protected by the Constitution, and I'm quoting one decision, there can be no rulemaking or lawmaking that abridges those rights. Here's another one: wherein people's rights are secured under the Constitution, they are not to be defeated in the name of local practice or local policy. So how is it then you can have an entire court system not based upon the Constitution? How is it you can pay an exorbitant fine for not having proof of insurance when your only crime is that you were broke and couldn't afford insurance? So now you have to pay a fine that's as much as somebody who's driving while intoxicated and actually jeopardizing people's public safety. Now, not having insurance isn't such a big deal, because when you do file a claim, chances are they're going to try not to pay it. So the court's ordering you to buy insurance, but good luck in trying to get the court ordering the insurance company to pay their claims. And when you force people to buy insurance, that goes against a national body of law. It goes against the Uniform Commercial Code, which is a uniform body of law, like uniform civil and uniform criminal bodies of law. Those are uniform laws in books that you cannot break those laws unless, of course, you have a loophole. So how is it you can be fined $1,500 for no proof of insurance, have your license suspended, your ability to work impaired, when yet you didn't crash, you weren't intoxicated, and you were driving responsibly? How in the world does that constitute a crime? And all of these victimless crimes that are prosecuted are prosecuted under a body of law which you were never told about. It's a secret jurisdiction where, even though the Constitution says you have a right to trial by jury, you don't have a right to trial by jury. Where excessive fines aren't prevented, they're actually encouraged and mandated. Where is this body of law that allows you to not be represented by an attorney, even though you're guaranteed the right to attorney if you cannot afford one? It even says in the Constitution, and it mentions the word admiralty in one of the amendments. It talks about how you have the right to understand the nature of the charge and you don't have to bear witness against yourself. That is a right that is protected under all bodies of law. In common law, which is civil, criminal law, and admiralty. Well, when the word admiralty shows up in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, when the word admiralty shows up, you have to go, well, what's that? What's that? Well, admiralty is a body of law. You can walk in and see the body of law in your library. It's a volume of books just as large as the Uniform Commercial Codes, as the Uniform Rules of Civil and the Uniform Rules of Criminal Procedure. And when you say to a judge in these courts, you say, well, the Constitution says, no, I have the right to an attorney. Or the Constitution says I have a right to bear witness. I don't have to bear a witness against myself. The Constitution says I'm supposed to have a jury. The Constitution says that no unusual and exorbitant fines. And if I'm broke and can't afford insurance, don't you think that's a little unusual to fine me for being broke? None of that matters in these courts. Why is that? Why does the Constitution get thrown out under all of these victimless crimes? Yet traveling upon public freeways is a fundamental right, has been found by appellate courts, right up there with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's a First Amendment right, as found out by the courts. Well, then why is it a privilege? When did traveling on a road that you built in a car that you paid for, and you're driving responsibly, you're not drunk, you're obeying all the traffic laws for safety, what gives them the right to take you off the road? There isn't, actually, unless you agree. Unless you agree to enter into the admiralty jurisdiction where all revised statutes are based upon. When you go and you ask the judge and you plead not guilty to a criminal traffic or even a regular traffic, you ask him what uniform rules of procedure are going to apply. And most of the time they'll tell you civil, which is a wrong answer. Once you get that on the record, you have a right to an appeal all the way up to the Supreme Court because the judge answered your question incorrectly. And if he says criminal, that's wrong too. He has to say maritime law for that to be a right answer. And it states in the Constitution that every person charged in any jurisdiction has a right to understand the nature of the charge. They have a right to. So if you ask the judge a question in order to understand the nature of the charge and he doesn't answer it, he's violated your First Amendment right to understand the nature of the charge. And that applies to maritime law. There is no loophole for that. But how do you know when you're in an admiralty court? How do you know when the Constitution does not apply? Well, the admiralty flag is flying. The maritime flag. What's a maritime flag doing in every courtroom in the country? What's a maritime flag doing behind the President of the United States? Is he not supposed to defend the Constitution? Did he not take that oath to defend the Constitution? Then why is there a flag flying behind a president, all presidents, by the way, that declares admiralty jurisdiction where the Constitution does not apply. So it's time for a mutiny. It's time for a mutiny. It's time to rewrite our laws. It's time to take corporate America out of the law writing business and put good American citizens in the law writing business. You do not have to be a lawyer to write a law. You do not. You don't have to have a degree to understand what's right and wrong. So if you're wondering why it seems like you're on a ship, you lost control of your environment and your life, and the captain wants to throw you in the brig without a trial, it can happen. They can lock you in your room. They could do anything they want due to maritime law and admiralty jurisdictions. And it's becoming more and more accepted that admiralty jurisdiction applies to state courts now, and that contractual and civil matters can fall under admiralty jurisdiction. But when you're in an admiralty jurisdiction, several things go away, many of your rights. And so when you look at the vaccine situation, and you look at the authoritarian way at which vaccines are administered without safety trials, and you would think something that you're injecting would carry a higher standard. You know, if you take something that's bad for you orally, sometimes you could pump your stomach, induce vomiting, dilute down what it is you took with a half gallon of water. But when you inject something, once you push that plunger, it's in your bloodstream, and there's no taking it back out. So you would think that any entity that was to protect your baby would worry about safety. I mean, everything else is so regulated with iron fist because of my safety. What about your child's safety? Until next time, be prepared, not scared.